Hello, today we're going to talk about the Sony ZV-E10. This camera here, I bought it like 6 months ago and is the one I have been using for most of the videos in this channel. I use it mostly here in the studio, so right now I'm recording on the Sony ZV-1. Sony announced this camera as a vlogging camera, although I use it mostly here in the studio. It's a great camera for many purposes. I prefer it actually than the ZV-1 in many aspects that I'm using right now. And I'm going to first give you a review of the settings that I use for vlogging, then the accessories I'm using, and then we will go out and see how it performs outside. So here we have the ZV-E10. First of all, let's turn it on. And the easiest configuration for vlogging that I have is this one. This button here, you can select the camera, the video, slow and quick. What we are interested about is the camera and video. So if you look at the screen, you just press it once. And you see the icon. Here's the camera, here's the video. This is the one we care. Now I would recommend to shoot in 4K, but if your computer is a bit old or you don't have much space in your hard drive, then let's go to high definition 1080p. If you press the menu button, then here on the top you can see these icons. Then go to the first, then the second, and in the second you can see here file format. If you click on that, here you can select either 4K or high definition. In my case, I just leave it in 4K because that's what I'm shooting. And for record settings, well, 25p is most common for all normal videos. Then here in the function button, you can select like ISO. Then you can select here if it's manual. I will always usually set it to manual. Then here is the creative style. I leave it to standard. This other part here is the product showcase set that you will see later how it's for. Here's the stabilization, steady shot, active that we will see now in a moment when I get out and I'm going to show you what it's for. The active, standard or off. Mic level, this is a microphone level. So you have to make some tests and adjust this depending on the microphone you have. And the white balance. This is something you need to take into consideration, for example, especially if you are outside, but the light changes constantly. If it's cloudy or sunny, or if you get somewhere inside a place, then you have to take that into consideration because it will change how the colors looks in your video. So at some point you want to, when you post-edit your video, you don't want the colors to keep changing. And those are basically the main settings I will have for the camera for vlogging outside. Now, in terms of accessories, if you are vlogging, of course, I would recommend to have a tripod. I like this one. It's a Manfrotto one. It's very strong, small. You can carry it anywhere. I would seriously recommend to get a ND filter because it helps with the amount of light that goes through the lens, and you can get one variable like this one. The ND filter, if it's very sunny, even if you try to reduce the amount of light that gets into the camera, you will not get to the point that you need. You will need an ND filter to get it right. You need an external microphone, although the microphone from the Sony is very good, but I would recommend to get an external one. I like this, the Deity Duo D4. If you are more into the lavalier kind of type, I would recommend getting the RØDE Wireless Go. If you're in the studio, well, I would recommend also to get one of these fake batteries. What they do is just provide endless juice to your camera. So basically it gets into the same place as a battery and you don't have to worry about it. And finally, if you are in the studio, I will get a cage like this one. You can see all these holes here. You can basically attach anything you want. The camera goes directly inside the cage and then you can screw this here. So you can attach an external monitor, another microphone, anything, basically anything you want, you can use with this cage. Is very useful and also offers some sort of protection as well. One more thing to keep in mind, if you are using sunglasses, make sure they are not polarized. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the screen of the camera. Look at this. Just turn on the camera. And if we put the glass in front, the screen is totally black. You can't see anything there. The reason is, I don't know exactly the optical reason, is because the glass is polarized and something's happening in this screen that you cannot see it. It doesn't happen in other cameras. I have Fuji cameras and it's fine. In the Sony ZV-1, it's happening as well. I don't know if any other Sony models. So if you're outside, of course, you want to see yourself in the screen. And anyway, this camera doesn't have a viewfinder, so you need to use the screen. So make sure that you don't have polarized sunglasses. Let's go out and start vlogging with this camera. But here we are testing the ZV-E10. Actually, I'm not using any ND filter. What I'm doing is using a lavalier microphone like you can see here and no ND filter. So basically the aperture now is 22, the f-stops. If you don't know what an aperture is, basically is the amount of light that the lens can capture through it. So if you have like small aperture, it means a big number, like here in 22, you have less light, but you have less of that effect that you have like a blurry background. So if you have a wider aperture, in that case, you get more lighting through the lens. The number, the F number, is going to be smaller, but of course you get more light. In a sunny day like now today, it's going to be completely overexposed because I cannot change the shutter speed. I'm recording now 25 frames per second, so the shutter speed has to be double that. In this case, it's 150. To fix this and to have a wider aperture, and you can have a better, like blurry background, I need to use an ND filter. So see the difference now. And the difference, now I'm using an ND filter, same settings, but the aperture is a lot wider. Now it's 3.5. So you probably notice that the background is a little bit more blurry. And this also allows you to be just flexible around. So you don't have to worry about the sun. If it's on your face, you're going to be overexposed or something like that. Now I'm going to make a test using the internal microphone of the ZV-E10. Now I'm using the internal microphone of the ZV-E10. I had to actually speak louder for you to hear me, I guess. And probably the wind is going to affect as well. There is a windshield that comes with the camera, but doesn't really make much of a difference. So I would suggest to actually use an external microphone, either a lavalier as I was using before, or a small shotgun microphone that you can put on the top of it. Okay, now we are going to check the stabilization about this camera for vlogging. Actually, it has been announced as a vlogging camera. So let's see, I'm going to start walking, and right now I'm going to deactivate the stabilization completely. So right now I'm walking, there's no stabilization. Basically, this camera doesn't have any in-body stabilization. So the only one you can get is from the lens. This is a kit lens, and it has it. Right now I'm walking in the Brighton beach, which you can see is full of pebbles. So it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be very bumpy when I walk. So there's no stabilization here at all. Let's put the standard stabilization. Okay, here we have standard stabilization. What it's using is actually the lens one, which is not bad. It's not like a gimbal, of course, but as you can see, it's doable. It creates a little bit of movement around. I'm trying to keep my arm as steady as possible. A good thing about this camera is also it's so light that you don't get really tired by holding it. And well, this is what you get with that. Now the next one would be the active stabilization. The problem with that is that it's going to crop the image. So keep an eye on how you see me. I'm going to keep here the same distance of my arm right now. I'm going to extend it, so it's going to be always the same distance. You can see here the proportion, okay? Now I'm going to activate it. You can see how it crops actually the image. Yeah. Not great actually for vlogging. I had to extend my arm a lot like this to talk. So I'm gonna walk with this. It's gonna be very closer than before. But as you can see, it's a bit better. Stabilizes a bit more. Notice that actually on the sides, you can see a little bit, like not a shaking one, but a weird effect. What it does is crops the image and digitally stabilizes it. It's not my preferred one, to be honest. I wouldn't use it unless you get a lens, a different lens with wider lens, so you can get more around you. On the other hand, I mean, otherwise I would use just a standard one. Active stabilization is good, for example, if you are narrating a story and you are not in front of it, so you don't really care about that small cropping in the image, because like in this case here, I'm just walking around and just narrating like the environment, the buildings, the city, whatever you want to say, and I keep walking, but it's fine because you're not cropping anything in particular, so you can just move farther or closer to the subject to get the shot that you want. One more thing is about the ISO. The ISO is how sensitive it is to the light. So higher ISO, you get more, it's capable of capturing more light. Lower ISO, you have less light. Lower ISO, less noise. More ISO, more noise in the image. So right now, as I said before, I'm using an ND filter to help me with the sunlight. Otherwise, even if I have a very low ISO and if I have a very narrow aperture, still the image will be too bright. But when I'm vlogging, in this case, I actually leave the ISO to auto. And the reason is because if I'm moving around, as you can see, I'm gonna start moving here. You can see how the light is changing. And so the ISO now is 200. It's trying to compensate. Still, this side is very dark, this is very clear. Now I'm in front of the sun. The ISO went down to 125. So you see, this is something that keeps changing. So for example, I'm gonna now put manual ISO and I'm gonna do the same. You're gonna see what is gonna happen. Now I have an ISO of 200. So if I get here to the sun, you can see there are many, you can get kind of overexposed. It's very, very bright. If I moved here, it's very dark. Of course, if I have the sun behind, I'm gonna be very, very dark here. And as you can see, it keeps fixed. So it depends how the light is changing. There is actually no automatic compensation from the camera. So in this case, unless you have a very kind of stable light, then the ISO in auto, if I'm vlogging and walking around, is something that's what I would use. Otherwise, if you're in a studio or in a more controlled environment, let's say it's a cloudy day and the light is going to be pretty much the same, then you can use a manual one, so you just can adjust as you like it. Now let's test the camera as a photo camera, not just for video, for vlogging. It's not bad. And anyway, you need a photo camera as well because you need to create those thumbnails or YouTube videos. So let's see how it performs as a camera. And here I'm recording with the Sony ZV-E10. I know you judge the difference. Another thing about this camera that I love is the fact that it has a product showcase as a ZV-1. So for example, when you put a product in front of you, immediately gets into focus and then gets in focus to you. This is an amazing feature that other cameras like that. So I see some people sometimes doing like putting the hand and then trying to put the product in front of it. With this one, you just put the product in front, picks it up, focus it, boom, a you, product, you, is great for that. If you are into blogging and you don't want to catch too much attention of people around, this camera is great. It's small, it's light, it's cheap, and it has interchangeable lenses, so you can just choose about a wide variety of Sony lenses for all the creative ideas you might have. The autofocus is good, the quality of the 4K video is good, and as a photography camera, well, that's different. If you are looking into photography and not video, then maybe this is not the camera for you. Because as a photography camera, it doesn't have a viewfinder. Also, accessing the controls is not that easy. You have to go through several menus to change them. And many times, well, as a photographer, when you go around, you see something, you want to catch the moment and you want to quickly get it. So if you have a camera that has very easy to access controls, then you can do that very quickly. In this one, well, you have to do a little bit more work, unless you set it in automatic and you just point and shoot. The purpose of this camera is for video, and it's also great for photography. You saw in the pictures we showed before, but you could be useful mostly for your thumbnails, but not really if you want just to focus on photography. I wouldn't recommend this one. I hope you enjoyed this video and you find useful information here. So go out there and start creating. Thank you for watching.